I'm here to tell your viewers that India can save 3 to 4 lakh crores a year. Today, China is the only game in town for electric vehicles. 97%.
Air conditioning is a sin item. It's an efficiency enhancer, so someone needs to speak to her about that.
I won't get into the GST discussion. I think
No, I don't want to get into. Hello and welcome to this very special podcast from Evo. And to be honest, we are always there for cars, bikes, motorsport, and whatnot. But today we break new ground. We are looking at a new paradigm in mobility, especially transport solutions, both for goods as well as people. And given the fact that everyone and his granny is going into EVs, I thought that why not we mix the best of all these worlds and try and make some sense of it, even though the world knows that I'm still not convinced on EVs, but it's like a necessary evil which the world will have to get used to. Informatively, many companies are going the EV way while not discarding ICE. But here I have got Sudhir Mehta of EKA Mobility. Sudhir is an old friend of ours. He's been there making a lot of special purpose vehicles. He's also a pioneer in getting seating solutions for the whole industry. He's also into seating solutions for railways. This is one of the signatures of a new emerging India. And now Sudhir has been working behind the scenes for the better part of about 2 years plus on mobility solutions which have EV massively in the picture. Welcome to Evo, Sudhir. So Sudhir, is this good enough of a description? I know that you have been in this business now, so you know ins and outs of many a thing. Tell us about EKA. Tell us about your involvement in getting towards EVs and in a different way.
So, thank you, Adil, for having me on. And as always, it's fantastic to see you. Uh, I also am here to change your mind about EVs. And I hope by the end of the podcast, you will agree that EVs are what is going to change India and is going to change the world. So, Adil, you're right. The introduction, this is something which has been a long time in the making. And let me start by the vision, the mission of what we are trying to do. And this is absolutely seminal for our country and it's absolutely seminal for our industry. As you know, the auto industry is the largest manufacturing industry part of this in the world. We are about 40-45% of manufacturing. And the EV industry represents the single biggest manufacturing opportunity of this century.
Absolutely. There's no denying that because everyone virtually starts from ground zero.
Absolutely. Number two, this is the one which has the seminal impact of changing our country. And let me explain how. You know, we have the dubious distinction of having amongst the most polluted cities in the country, the most congested cities. Both of us stay in Pune, which is infamous for its traffic. And both
It's a Jekyll and Hyde situation.
Absolutely. And both of these can only be changed by two things to change in India. One is the advent of electric transport for goods and passenger movement. Let me give you some statistics, which I'm sure you will know, but which may surprise even some of the viewers. Today, actually, medium and heavy trucks and buses constitute about 4% of the volume of vehicles in our country, but they contribute to 50% of pollution. Fact one. Fact two.
What has been the government doing on this front?
I'll come to that. More importantly than the government, I think we also have to look at what is the industry doing. We are always normally looking at the government. I think it's time we look as an industry.
That is the only disconnect I have here because the government had to be policing that implementation of policies and whatnot is as much the government's thing. Industry has always been dumped down by saying, do this. Someone gets up from right side of the bed, says it's all hunky-dory. Next day gets up from the left side of the bed, says off with these guys, let's have BS10. We need, the industry works on long lead times. So maybe I think there has got to be some sort of understanding about how to make the turnarounds, and implementation is really the key.
So, Adil, that turnaround has come, and it's come for one simple reason, which is that electric vehicles, electric commercial vehicles save money and also have a very major impact on pollution in our country. 6 lakh crores is the diesel that we use simply for medium and heavy trucks and buses in our country. Out of that, 5 lakh crores every year is used for medium and heavy trucks. 1 lakh, roughly about 90,000 crores, is used for buses. Now, imagine a scenario where all of this moves to electric. This is not a scenario. This is going to be a reality in the next 3 to 5 years in India. It's going to be a reality for one reason, and one reason alone is that electric vehicles save money. Fundamental reason for running an electric vehicle is the more you run it, the more you save. And which vehicles run the most? Not two wheelers,
Yes,
not
sure.
cars. They're trucks and buses.
Trucks and buses are the revenue generators, and that
Absolutely.
is the reason why they need to. You cannot keep a revenue generator idle and standby.
Exactly. So I'm here to tell your viewers that India can save 3 to 4 lakh crores a year by switching to electric commercial vehicles, which is why this change is here and now. This change is going to happen in the next couple of years, and it's a tsunami which cannot be stopped.
I admire your conviction with which you say, and many a time we can understand that. But then it again, I veer down to this thing: where is the electricity going to come from? Number one, and number two, the grids, will they support, say, at one station 10 superchargers? If the grid cannot support in that area those 10 superchargers, it'll be a disaster.
So here again, let's look at where India is going with renewable power. As you are aware, India is running one of the largest programs for renewable power in the country. And India is looking at about 200 gigawatts of power to come in the next 5 years. Even if 50% of electric commercial vehicles get converted in the next 5 years, the requirement is about 44 gigawatts, which is only 20% of what is being generated. And actually, the holy grail of power is starting to happen, which is two things. One is solar power is becoming cheaper. Secondly, stationary battery storage is becoming
How
cheaper.
long do you think that before the government wants its cut off that becoming cheaper and they can,
Well, at some point it will happen
Ah,
because as taxation comes, ultimately government looks to tax. But even if it does, the fact is that solar power has reached an inflection point, and with the combination of battery storage, where the costs are coming down today, solar power is available. The last couple of tenders in our country, and this is verifiable data, has gone with the advent of battery supplies less than 3.5 rupees per unit. Now, even if you take the cost of transmission, you take the cost of T&D losses, you call it theft and distribution or T&D or whatever you call it, you're talking about power at around 6 rupees or 5 rupees. At power at 6 rupees or 5 rupees, I'll give you an example of an electric truck which will make actually every electric truck owner in the country stand up and say, what am I doing? This payback period for a heavy electric truck in India today with no subsidy, no benefit is less than 2 years. Now, a 55 ton, which let's say carries 41 tons typically, take the example, normally the fuel is about 2.5 kilometers per liter. So you're talking about 30 rupees per kilometer on the cost. Now it travels, let's say, 400 kilometers a day. The same if you take the cost of power at 11 rupees, which is the highest cost of power, is about 30%. And if you take the cost of power at 6 rupees, which is what you would get with solar, your payback period is less than 18 months. This shift to electric has only been constrained because of the availability of electric vehicles. Take the example of electric three-wheelers. 3 years ago in India, the percentage was less than 5%. Last month, it's more than 50%.
but this is, are we talking about from established OEMs, or are we talking about those cheap Chinese things which you can get to drive without licensing and without numbers, as we see in North India so many times?
If we have something to do with it, there will be Indian products. And this is where Make in India
Indian
comes in.
products,
Designed in
certified,
India,
roadworthy, and whatnot.
absolutely
Mm.
certified in India, completely safe, meeting all international safety standards. This is the power of the Indian automotive industry. Let's not forget that the Indian
Or is it
automotive
is it
industry,
only Indian automotive? Is it the power of India as a country, as a people, as a nation? In that,
100% it is, because today China is the only game in town for electric vehicles. 97% of electric vehicles by volume come from China. Last year, they created capacity of 27 million cars. Now, China doesn't sell 27 million cars, but they created EV capacity. Similarly, this change will come to India. It's a question of time. I can tell you without a minute's hesitation that the next 5 years you're going to see electric trucks, medium heavy trucks, you're going to see three wheelers, you're going to see buses, intercity buses will only be electric because it will not make sense to do it. And what's the best thing at the end of it? We are going to save half an hour for every Indian. uh, if you are able to move to electric, the benefit A of public transport in India by adding buses will save time. Number two, the pollution will come down. Now, when you combine all of the health benefits of moving to electric plus the cost saving, it's a complete no brainer.
Okay, let's now get down to what you are proposing to do, and you've already got in the pipeline. As I saw through the dossier which you had shared with me to do some homework, you starting from last mile mobility solutions, the three wheelers and auto rickshaws, then you gradually step up to transport vehicles across the spectrum, going up to 15 tons, as I've seen it. So, please, can you run us through that product portfolio, what you envisage to do, and when would these things roll out? What is the timeline you have specified?
So at EKA, we have probably the most ambitious plan for commercial electric vehicles in the country. We started our journey, as I said, almost a decade ago, where we started a partnership with VDL. VDL is the number one electric bus company in Europe. And a couple of years ago, Mitsui of Japan came on board as a strategic partner for us. So we are privileged to be the only EV company possibly in the world which has one of the largest Japanese conglomerates as well as the number one European conglomerate as partners. Having said that, most of our tech and technology is developed out of India, and we're extremely proud of that. We are one of the auto PLI companies. We've set up a large engineering establishment. We have for
Let
the
me
last
interject for a minute. When I went through your dossier, I see a lot of great industry professionals which you have accumulated. I think the strength also remains not just buying or developing technology yourself, but also harnessing the right human resources to get this job going.
So you're absolutely right. EKA, which is the name of our company, actually
It's
means
a
coming together.
Sanskrit name.
Yes, Ekatra.
Hmm.
So it means coming together. And Sudhir Sharma. Sudhir is a
Very well.
common friend. Sudhir, actually, we spent a lot of time deliberating on this because we felt as a company we have to bring together the ecosystem. And the ecosystem is one which is only going to be happening not just if it's internal, if it's external. So the first thing we did was, having been in this industry for a long time, we were able to attract the best talent in the country.
And you did it below the radar, so to speak.
Yes, we were almost in stealth mode for a
Hmm.
couple of years. The idea was that there is a lot of talent which wanted to get into this new age industry, and as such, they bring a lot of knowledge. So I admit I went to some people who were running multi-billion-dollar businesses and said, "Come to a business which is still pre-revenue." And okay, it took a little bit of selling, but I think they understood the purpose of what we are trying to achieve. Secondly, as a company, we have some very different goals. All of us are owners in the company. 100% of employees in my company who've been there for more than 1 year are stakeholders in the company. We are trying to change the ecosystem, and the only way to change it is by having hundreds of owners. So every employee in our company thinks as an owner. Absolutely. The idea is that we are here to disrupt. The idea here is that we want to take India to a different level on the EV landscape. This is a very tall ambition, but the fact is that today, as they say, the stars are aligned for our country. The stars are aligned because electric vehicle technology is here and now. The availability actually of power is actually available for the kinds of numbers that we are talking about. And most importantly, the government now has an enabling environment which is positive for electric. We are one of the beneficiaries of the Auto PLI scheme, which actually gives us that bandwidth to be able to pass on those benefits to the customer, because the customer in India is always looking for a good deal.
Let's see this being applied to the three wheelers. Let's start from the three wheelers.
Sure.
How does it apply from there?
So simple.
Both consumer as well as the operator.
So three wheeler is a very simple game. Three wheelers today are the lifeblood of transport for much of urban India and a lot of rural India. So we said we need to look at solutions starting right from three-seater to eight-seaters. Now, the three-seater market has almost shifted to electric in the last couple of years. Both the legacy players as well as the new age players are making very strong electric vehicles. our three-wheeler, which we are launching at the auto show, is actually designed as much for exports as it's for India, and this is where Mitsui comes in. Mitsui has a long history of international partnerships. So we established a presence in Africa more than a year ago. We looked at many African markets, and we see India is a very important export opportunity for three-wheelers, and three-wheelers can are easy to handle. They
So this is
package
what
easily,
for passenger as well as for goods application.
passenger as well as for goods applications. We are introducing both models. There, the payback period for an electric three-wheeler versus a diesel three-wheeler is less than 2 years. It doesn't matter whether you buy an EKA or you buy some other company's products, but the fact is these vehicles make commercial sense. They are available.
So let me ask again, in that sort of sense, the heart of any EV is got to be not just the motor but the battery propulsion. So, what is the battery technology you have decided to invest in or keep faith with as you start off?
So actually, we've taken a modular approach. Across our range, we are focused on LFP batteries because our view is for markets like India, LFP is the right battery technology. It is safe, which is most important. It is able to take into account Indian weather conditions, and it's very well tried and tested around the world. And equally importantly, the cost of LFP is now coming down every year. It's a very stable technology from that point of view. So we are using LFP. The benefit of a three-wheeler is that it can be charged almost anywhere. We have onboard chargers which are available. The other big change which will happen in India, Adil, and this is going to come much sooner than all of us think, is, the government is now coming out with a scheme to give solar power to about 100 million households. Now, imagine a scenario in the next 5 years.
I just did my whole house with solar power just 5 months ago.
Bingo. So that means you are able to, at some point, if you have enough solar power, connect to that. And if you do that, you have the ultimate solution. You have a vehicle which is running at almost no cost. And this is what I think the need specifically for rural India is. Rural India needs low cost solutions, which is where we come to our 8-seater solution. This is going to be India's and possibly one of the world's first solutions, which is an 8-seater electric vehicle. The idea here is that this is where families can travel together. This is where last mile for metro connectivity can be there. This is when rural populations can travel. This will have a range of 200 kilometers. Now,
Yeah,
for
200 kilometers is good. It's
is
very
much more
decent.
than what anybody would
Yes.
normally need. And the cost of these vehicles, the return on investment of these vehicles is so positive that we see the shift to electric only constrained by availability and not by
So
demand.
let us also see one thing is what you're saying is you can recoup your capital cost of buying a vehicle within 18 to 24 months is what
The
you're
differential cost of what you pay. So let's
huh.
say if the cost of diesel is 1 and the cost of electric is 1.5, you will recoup that 0.5 within 2 years, but the entire cost of the vehicle may be in less than 3 years.
Okay. So in that sort of sense, the messaging to the operator buyer has got to be of a very different kind, number one. And number two is how different or stable and safe would be the electric three wheeler compared to the conventional ICE three wheeler.
So to answer your question, absolutely safe. One is these technologies are all tried and tested. We work with the best component suppliers in the world. Having come from the component industry, we
I'm not
see,
just mentioning about safety, just not from component.
yeah,
I'm talking structurally also.
no, structurally, these are vehicles which are designed ground up. We've spent a lot of time testing, validating these vehicles. We've used the latest in CAD technologies. We are working very closely with ARI. In fact, a lot of our new simulation technologies, where we work very closely with ARI. We got ARI to do a full safety audit on our vehicles. We had an international Italian company come and do an audit of these. So these meet all the standards.
Design work is being done by you all.
Design work has been done by us in India, but we've used some of the most famous international designers as well as safety experts to come and help us, who work with European and Western companies. In fact, some of our employees, you'll be very happy to note, come from some of the best of international companies. In fact, the head of our truck business is a guy called Sohail Merchant, who was working with a US company called Canoe. He's actually a Punekar who went to the US, was there for 20 years, reached out to me some 6 months ago, and came back to India. So the promise of the Indian EV industry is is huge, and this is attracting the best of talent from around the world. So we are very fortunate to have this talent. Most importantly, what distinguishes our vehicle range across the spectrum is the software. So, as you are aware, earlier the strength of Indian component industry used to be the mechanicals. People would buy an electric vehicle basically on the strength of the drivetrain, the engine, the transmission. These things had to work. Today, for an electric vehicle, the single most important differentiator is going to be the software which drives it. Unfortunately, in India, much of the vehicles which have been running on Chinese software, which means actually the control of that software resides not in India but somewhere else. And this is also in some ways a national security kind of challenge. What we have done with
They'll
our
just turn off the switch and everyone will be grounded here.
absolutely, and
That's a
most
scenario which
is
is
one of
really
those
frightening.
movie
Yes.
scenarios. So the first thing we did with our buses when we introduced our buses a couple of years ago, for the last 5 years, we have developed our own proprietary vehicle technology. To give you some data, for a bus, we are capturing almost about 1400 to 1500 parameters every half second for a bus. For a LCV, we are capturing maybe about 300. Now, even on a three wheeler, we'll be capturing all of the
Can you
important
just
elements.
elaborate this thing about capturing for the lay persons
Sure.
amongst our.
Sure. So there is a vehicle control unit, the VCU, and all of these vehicles are connected with software, and they are connected through a SIM or a Wi Fi or whatever is available at that point in time. Now, all of these data points range from things like all of the battery temperatures, sensors. We have sensors in pretty much every part of the vehicle. So we are able to capture battery temperatures. We are able to capture driver behavior. So, for instance, we are capturing how the brake was applied, how the accelerator is applied, how the driver is behaving, are they following traffic rules. We are able to, of course, we get data on every half second on where the vehicle is, locational data. But most importantly, all of these 1500, and these we maybe capture more than 200 parameters on battery. So we are able to do predictive analysis, and this is where AI ML comes in, where we are able to analyze this large streams of data. And it took us actually a year to figure out how to store this data, because you're talking about data which is really going into the cloud, which is in mega kind of bytes and terabytes and all of this. And then we analyze this data to be able to say, one, for safety, most importantly, number two, for driver behavior, and number three, most importantly, for predictive maintenance. So we are able to actually predict when something will go wrong, which is why the vehicle can be reliable.
Sudhir, so from the three wheelers, you go a step up. What is the next step? What increment do you go on as far as size of the vehicle and payload and GVW?
So from three wheelers, the next step is four wheelers, of course, which is we start with our vehicle, which has now been on the road, which is a 1.5 ton payload LCV. This
Where
is
is it running?
so we've actually been running these vehicles for a year and a half almost. We've got about 200 vehicles on the road.
Okay.
One of these vehicles, if you take the Mumbai Pune Expressway, we have a vehicle which for the last almost 1.5 years, we have a couple of vehicles which run from Mumbai to Pune, from Powai to going all the way to Pune, which is working for one of the very large companies in the country. We have vehicles working for IKEA. We have vehicles working for cold chain. So we have been demonstrating in working out business cases for different technologies. We were in no hurry to introduce. We wanted to make sure the vehicle delivers for the customer for which it's intended. One of the major applications for such vehicles is actually going to be for cities for like garbage collection. So we actually gave 10 vehicles to the Pune Municipal Corporation almost 6 to 9 months ago, and we have been monitoring the data, and this is
Where do
validated
they
by them.
operate? I have not even heard them or seen them.
Well, you don't hear
Yeah, I
electric
know that.
vehicles, which is the best part.
Yeah, I know that.
And the good part about this is that the data of PMC, and this is not our data, shows that the running cost of the vehicles is less than 20%. And most importantly, what happens in many such vehicles is there is no possibility of theft of diesel. So there's nothing you can steal in an electric vehicle. So, and the performance of these is great. India will need at least 20 to 30,000 electric garbage vehicles per year if we have to take care of the garbage of our cities. We worked also, Adar Poonawalla Foundation has a couple of our vehicles which are running in Pune. So we worked with select customers, and the data very clearly shows that the movement to electric on garbage is going to happen in a very big way. So these are the on cold chain. That's another application where again electric vehicles are very viable. We have a vehicle which has been running, which actually carries pastries from point A to point B. Now, another one which is carrying pizza. So the pizza and all of the ingredients for these. So these are all specific use cases for electric vehicles. We've been building the data, and now we have all of this data with which now we go
So
to the
you have
mass
got
market.
so many engineering applications already sussed out for what your vehicles can be used in or slotted in.
Because the customer is not looking for a vehicle, the customer is looking for a solution. Absolutely. And especially in electric, because the questions you are asking, you of course are one of the most knowledgeable people in the industry.
No, I'm trying to
uh,
shore up my knowledge
no,
on
no.
electrics, and I'm getting a
Uh,
shock by the second.
you are you're being very modest, but the average customer is not looking to go into all this. They want to understand, give me a solution that works. So show me how much money are you going to make, is your vehicle reliable.
Brings me to another point, and everyone we have got about ICE has spent about a century and 25 years, 125 years, so they know what are the pitfalls. In electric vehicles, safety is very important from the maintenance point of view. You just cannot open something, put your hand there, and you're going to be having a rocket ship taking you. How do you train, or how do you get people who are operators to learn what not to do?
Right. One, driver training becomes a very important issue because electric vehicles drivers need to be trained, specifically buses, on how to use. That's one area where we've set up a driver training center. We've got a simulator, so we are training all the drivers for our buses. Secondly, actually, in these vehicles, there is very little maintenance. The way we've set up our modular architecture is almost swap in, swap out. Gone are the days where you're going to take that vehicle and somebody is going to work on a motor or somebody is going to be working on an axle. Electric vehicles, by design, if something goes wrong, normally it is the software which can be corrected over the air. You can have over the air updates. In the very unlikely scenario that a motor, there's a problem with the motor or there's a problem with the axle, at least the way our vehicles are configured, these are swap in, swap out. So we would send our technician, which would go in a vehicle, typically with a laptop. They would already know what's wrong because the 1200 parameters that or 1500 parameters that we are measuring will already show us which part of the vehicle. And this is to come to that. One of the things that we are launching at the auto show is something called EKA Connect, which will be an app, which will be something which is available on desktop, where all of this data will be available to
Monitor,
our fleet customers.
and they can monitor
So
it.
they know exactly what goes wrong. And the person goes, he changes the motor, brings back the old motor, which is refurbished back in the plant. So this is one of the challenges of electric vehicles, that service revenue actually goes down. And this is why, as a new OEM, we chose the model of not having hundreds of dealerships, because the challenge would have been to make sure the viability of these dealerships is maintained. As you know, dealerships don't make as much money from selling as they do in service. And the challenge for electric vehicles is you don't need service, and which is why selling models will change.
Let's get back to the LCVs.
Sure.
So from the three wheelers, where do you hop on? Go up.
So the LCVs is 1.5 ton. Then from that point, we are looking at all the way up. Let me take you all the way up to which the big daddy, which is the 55 ton. Now, this is really
This
where
is really huge, 55 tons. And what is the range, so to speak, and what is the performance parameters for? And as I assume it, 55 tons, it's not going to be a city slicker. It's got to be on the highways from major metros to major metros. And that is how I think those things will run.
So, Adil, as you know, you can separate the market for a long distance freight into a couple of different. One is, let's say, a truck is moving from Delhi to Cochin. That's not the first market for electric. The first market for highway for electric is again applications. Take the example of cement in our country. India is one of the largest cement producers in the country. Normally, you will have very
And
fixed
one of the
routes.
largest polluters of cement dust. Mhm.
Exactly. And this is where you have dedicated, again, electric vehicles work where you have dedicated loads available. So the utilization of the fleet is higher. Most of the trucks which run for cement in our country run normally about 18 to 20 hours in a day. Now, that's the best use case for electric vehicle because you are running dedicated loads. You have charging available at both points, and normally the leads for these end up being 150 to 250 kilometers, which is again the best. One of the, let's say, always questions which people ask is what is the range of your truck? Actually, the range of the truck is based on battery capacity, and the way we
Yes,
have
yeah.
made it is modular. We can increase it,
Hmm.
but like everything else, nothing comes for free. If you
Sure, sure.
increase the range, that means you have to increase the battery capacity. For a country like India, the solution, in my opinion, is actually to optimize battery capacity, not have the highest, because if your truck is going to run on dedicated loads for cement, you don't need very high battery. Even a 250 kilowatt hour battery is more than enough, which runs, let's say, 400 kilometers to 500 kilometers a day. And studies have already shown India already has maybe about 2 to 3,000 electric trucks which are running.
So these trucks will definitely need infrastructure on the main highways where the trucker stops would be there and infrastructure for charging, because 400 kilometers also you do. So to recharge it back to whatever capacity to do another 400 the next day, what is the lead time a trucker will need to, because he can definitely stops for rest, etc. Plus, do your trucks have capability to have two operators there inside so that when one is fatigued the other one takes over?
So, answers to two. For let me answer the first one. Trucks which run on dedicated routes will typically have chargers on both sides, which means that there will be a charger when they stop and there'll be a charger when they discharge the cargo. And normally that's the time where the driver takes a break, has tea, coffee, lunch, and that's the time the vehicles can be charged. And normally a 1 to 2 hours charging time is not much because that's the time the driver will take. For trucks to travel on highways, we will need to electrify highways.
Are we seeing any thought processes on that electrifying highways, like that's been the rage in certain countries in Europe and in the US as well?
So, interestingly enough, I just made a presentation to the government on that a few days ago. Actually, 60% of freight in India is on 8 routes. And if we simply electrify all routes, rather than electrifying all routes, if we simply focus on these 8 routes, let's say the Delhi Mumbai corridor,
Hmm.
Chennai Bangalore, Mumbai Pune, these are the high density
Right,
corridors.
right.
To If one has to electrify all these, and fortunately the government is already doing it. You must have seen they've come with a scheme where they're now supporting charging infra, and I'm sure this will happen very rapidly. Charging technology is very standard, it's available now. Once this happens, then you will start to see a lot of long distance trucks, because then that range anxiety goes off. Imagine on the Delhi Mumbai highway is you will be able to reach in 12 hours. You can carry passengers, and I'll come to that later. You can eventually even carry people, and you have maybe charging points at 4 or 5 locations. That's more than enough. And the utilization of chargers, conversely, for commercial vehicles is actually much higher. The utilization today in India for chargers which are used for cars is less than 5%, because it's taking time. Commercial chargers, on the other hand, which are used for trucks and buses, are used 20 to 30% of the time. So companies which are putting up charging infra are always happier to set this up, because essentially their revenue is based on usage.
Correct.
And which is why I'm very confident that in the next 2 to 3 years, you're going to see a sea change in India in terms of charging capability for commercial vehicles.
Okay, now let's talk about your buses, because when I saw the bus about a year ago or something, it looked like a cube on wheels. I think there is method in the madness, the way you package the buses, the bodywork, the structure, shed some, because I think you use some bonded material sheets to do your external cladding, or that real the load bearing structure. So where did that thought come from? And I also see that the face of the bus is modular. You can put it on buses from different meter lengths, which you have what you call spoken about.
So that's the benefit of not being a legacy player, is that one can think from a fresh for electric. Again, we had a very carefully thought out strategy as far as the looks are concerned. Typically, commercial vehicles have to be welcoming, and for passenger transport, the idea is when you see our bus, what do you think of? You think of smiling. And that is what our front fascia across our range, if you look at our
It looks
buses,
pleasant.
is actually a smile. And the idea is to make public transport safe, affordable, and to be something which is comfortable. First of all, when you get into an electric bus, and I would highly advise anybody to travel either using our buses, Uber is running our buses in Delhi, at Pune airports, at different locations. Once you step into a air conditioned electric bus, and it's not just us being made by any manufacturer, you're going to see the difference because A, the NVH levels are completely very low. There is very low vibration. Most of these have air suspension, so they're extremely comfortable. The benefit we had was because we had no legacy. Typically, what's happened with most of the legacy manufacturers are is truck chassis were converted to bus chassis were converted to electric. We had no truck at that point, we had no bus at that point, so we were able to think afresh, which is why our buses are like to like about 15% lighter than competition because they are only designed for electric. We cannot fit a diesel engine on our buses. This means we are able to get higher
You
range.
use the neoplan sort of
Yes, monocoque. So
monocoque
we
structure
use
to
the
what you got to
monocoque
do
for
that
our
thing.
9 meter,
Yeah.
which is very well tried and tested. It's working very well in Europe. Our partners VDL have enormous amount of experience, and we in fact got we have a couple of Dutch experts who've spent 2 years with us in India, helping us with our technologies to validate all of this. So pure electric vehicles are going to be much lighter in weight, which means essentially you're going to have more range. And our buses, which start from 7 meters, a 7 meter is, in our opinion, a very good solution for last mile metro, which is what the government is already looking at. If you will have seen the recent PM Seva tenders in which we participated, and we are hoping to be one of the major players in this category. The first is the 7 meter bus, which is a 22-seater, plus about 20-25 people to
The
be able
one
to
at the
stand.
Pune airport is that?
That's actually a 9 meter, but
Okay.
it's a smaller variant of that. Again, it
Okay.
looks and feels the same,
Same.
but
Okay.
it's a smaller version of that, which is our 7 meter. Again, you'll be able to see it at the Bharat Mobility show next week. Then we have our 9 meter, which is the staple, let's say the largest segment, bus segment in India today is the 9 meter. The 9 meter can carry 33 people, plus can carry about 30 or 40 standing. We also have versions which are for staff transport. We are working with Uber. Uber has been running our buses almost for the last 8 months through our partner Transfold. In these buses, actually, if you go to Uber Shared in Delhi and you put in, that's actually our bus, EKA buses, which are running, and they are going from Gurgaon Airport to Noida to Ghaziabad. Again, these are perfect use cases because people are not wanting to take their cars. They did a very interesting experiment. Uber actually worked with Penguin, the books, and they ran a campaign with our buses where they had actually books up front, and people were offered that these books were available, they could read them and they could go, and the response was fantabulous. I mean, I saw some of the videos of passengers which were traveling. You are in air conditioned comfort, you can read a JK Rawlings, and rather than driving and worrying about traffic and all of this. So India
It's a
has been
whole
constrained.
different ecosystem. The way you what you call shifting the paradigm from what is there right now to something even more friendlier ecologically, and also in the sense of wellness, so to speak. But what price does all this come at?
So here's where you'll be surprised. Yes, the capital cost is much higher. Typically, an electric vehicle, depending on the category of vehicle that you buy, will be between 1.3x to 1.8x, let's say a comparable diesel vehicle. But again, this is where I think we need a change in mindset. The mindset cannot be this is a capital piece of equipment. You can't actually, the battery is fuel. So you are, in some ways, when you use a battery electric vehicle, you are buying fuel up front and then reducing your costs. So this is where actually, as a country, finance ecosystems will need to catch up, because a customer typically looks at EMIs. Now, EMIs on electric vehicles are certainly higher than those on conventional vehicles, but once the period of the EMI is over, the vehicle is absolutely free. And the running cost is, as I said, about 20% to 30% of running a diesel vehicle. So this is the biggest change in paradigm, which as a company, as an ecosystem, will have to do, is to convince people that they should be willing to pay
Convince,
more upfront.
convincing will start with your messaging, right?
Absolutely.
So That's social engineering. The technical engineering you already, the social engineering part is really at the heart of it all, as I see it.
And that's sometimes the tougher part.
Yes, absolutely.
We
So you, I know that what you are trying to do is going to try to give value out of that capital. So you are not, you may be pricey, but you're not expensive to, so to speak.
Absolutely
So
correct.
that
I'm
is
going to use that, huh? By the way.
okay. The invoice will be on the way soon. But the key thing is, unless and until we highlight things which matter to the common lay person, that is what will propel this thing to mushroom into a big thing. How much of that aspect which you will need to do, and maybe yes, you'll have to go back again to Sudhir Sharma to try to get that social engineering bit done.
I keep going back to for a lot of things. I know how to make vehicles well, but we have to learn how to market it well. The You are right. This is a challenge. It's also a challenge because in public transport or even staff transport, to the sense, the person deciding which vehicle to use is very different from the person using. Now, what happens in staff transport? Are you going to give a choice of air conditioning? The normal answer would be hell yes. It's if you travel in air conditioned comfort, it's a lot better. But the person who is the administration department says, do I pay that 2% more for air conditioning versus trying to save that money? This is again where companies will have to change their mindset. We have to be willing, and this is why I keep saying that we can't leave this only to the government. For all the talk of ESG in our country, it's somewhat unfortunate that we've not moved to electric buses for private staff transport. It's only because the guys who are handling these contracts are not the CEOs, but they're the heads of admin, and they simply look at the initial cost and say, okay, make it less than diesel. How is that possible? You have to look at a lifetime cost. A CEO can understand this, but it sometimes takes time to convince the, let's say, the line managers. It'll happen. It's a question of time. And
Sudhir, for anything which we see in the automotive world, be it revenue generators like the way you guys are going about it, how much of a role does design play in the overall gambit of things?
huge, huge, huge. And you are a big fan of design, and same for me. I think the auto is an emotion, and when you sit in a vehicle, doesn't matter again if it's a truck or a bus, it has to convey something. So one of the things we are trying to convey through our range of vehicles is we are trying to convey comfort, which is most important for passenger. For goods, of course, it is a return on investment, but things like driver safety is very important, driver ergonomics is very important. We make seating systems so we understand the value of that. Somebody is sitting on this for 12, 14 hours, so the benefit of a steering wheel. So for our 8-seater vehicle, again, the question of, are you going to have the handlebar kind of thing, which
Yes.
is, or are you going to have a steering wheel which makes it easier? The question of power,
Tiltable, height adjustable,
all of these things,
all of those
absolutely. So
things.
these are absolutely important. Air conditioned cabins. Fortunately, the government is now mandating air conditioned
So it's
cabins
no
to come
longer
in for
a sin, huh?
LCVs.
Like how our finance minister
Yes,
says,
absolutely.
air
Because
conditioning is a sin item.
you know,
It's an efficiency enhancer. So someone needs to speak to her about
I
that.
won't get into the GST discussion. I think
No,
there
no, I
has
don't
been,
want to get into.
and
But
unfortunately, the EVs
unfortunately,
are low GST at this
no.
point. So
My
I
thing is
hope
that
it
I
stays this
don't
way.
like this word sin coming into automotive stuff.
Absolutely.
That is the way.
There is
Mhm.
nothing, this is actually carrying people, carrying goods is a sick. It's something sick. It's what moves our nation. Let's remember that majority of our people still travel in buses. I think we keep
Absolutely.
forgetting this.
Yeah,
We keep
exactly.
forgetting that more people travel in buses than travel in trains. We keep forgetting that the primary mode of travel for most women, and this is an issue which actually is completely different but related to this. In India, we have one of the biggest challenges, which is that of gender equality and employment of women. And do you know why most women go out of the workforce? It is because they don't have access to safe transportation. They suffer from the fact that when from their homes to the endpoint where they work, there is no safe transportation, which is what brings me to the metro situation in our country. Metros in India, and it's very good. In our city, take the example of Pune. We've spent almost, I think, the budget is about 25,000 crores on our metro. Unfortunately, except a few cities, metros are running at less than one third of the capacities for which they were designed. And initially, the projections were made. Why? It's very simple. You don't have last mile connectivity. We don't have footpaths. The footpaths which are there are encroached. We don't have walking spaces available. You don't have parking available. So it's easy to take a Western concept and say, people, where will people park? And if I have to bring my two-wheeler or four-wheeler, spend on parking, then run through a non-existing footpath, then try and get to the end point, then find another two-wheeler,
Sudhir, you should have
four-wheeler to
been
take
there in the
me.
planning department of urban
No,
centers, no?
I'm happy with my day job. You know, our
but
common
I, but I
passion is
know,
also the
but I know
city.
that both of us also come
Yeah,
from that same line of thought.
yeah.
At the end of the day, you can do only so much and not further. But then, is the rest of the authorities, the various utilities, etc., are they really what you call waking up to this new scenario of electrification? And what are the benefits which can accrue to a city like Pune or whatever that way?
So, as you know me very well, I'm a born optimist, and my view is the glass is always half full. I think in India, you have to keep breaking that rock. You keep breaking it enough times, and at one point, it will break. Uh, Change is coming. I think the opportunity in India, and this is what we could do in India to design so many vehicles is an opportunity I could have only have had in our country. Believe me, there is no other country. Take the example of Europe, and we have many partners in Europe, and that we can
They,
have a much longer
no,
discussion
but
on
Europe,
this.
they say already is the old world and they are thinking old
I-
and they
I-
have grown old.
for all the talk of electric mobility, Europe makes less than 5,000 electric buses, take plus or minus 500 for the last 10 years, and the market CAGR is less than 3%. In India, the government is talking about 800,000 electric buses. I'm like a kid in a candy store. I don't know.
Absolutely.
This is part of the problem. We end up eating too
You
much candy.
it shows on both our paunches.
Yeah, exactly.
But last time when we met at Bharat Mobility itself, and you had someone, a representative from Cobus, and you were supposed to what you call do stuff together. Cobus is supposedly at the leadership of the EV commercial vehicle business, especially the bus business. What went there with?
So we
Did they not understand the potential which is there inherent in India? And also the conviction with which you yourself are doing that, and they had come to you to speak, and they still could not see clarity about what to do.
So Cobus, actually, we have a common partner which is Mitsui. So Mitsui, which has a stake in our company, also has a stake in Cobus, and we have very good relationships with them. We I visited them last year, and they're a fantastic company, for airport buses. And India, the mandate is actually to go. There's already a GR which says that almost all electric buses and all electric actually vehicles at airports have to be electric, because that's one of the main reasons. So Europe takes their own time. Europe is
By
used to a
that time,
world
they'll
which were
be the rest of the world will bypass them.
so.
But let's not worry about that.
Let's not worry about that.
Let's look at
But
ourselves.
let me give you the positive side of that. Again, at Bharat Mobility, this was not a product that I covered, but thank you for bringing me to it. We are also launching our low floor bus. This is something which we are making in partner as a licensed product from VDL. This is going to be a fantastic bus which has has an option of going up to 18 meters articulated now, which is why, as I we are very proud of the fact that we are possibly the only company which will now have passenger vehicles ranging from 3 people to 125 people. 18-meter articulated bus can carry 125 people, which is the best use case for that. India, we have 1.4 billion people and growing. So this is the kind of solutions our country needs, and I think us, and it's not just us, other people are working on similar technology. I personally think there is no competition between Indian manufacturers. We have to make the Indian EV system to be the best in the world. We are the only ecosystem which has the potential to compete with our neighbors. And yeah, I think we're going to
Are we going to what you call come out on top on technology and also on pricing? Those two things, technology will matter, but then so would pricing vis-a-vis what they sell it at.
So, to be realistic, our neighbors have a lot of lead start in technology because they have the volumes which are already there. And this is, again, uh, I think in the future the government will move, or I hope they will move actually from subsidies to creating better use cases for use of electric vehicles. At some point, subsidies will stop because there
Absolutely, they
is
have
only
to.
so much that
Yes,
one can
yes.
do, and subsidies are only really a seeding. But once imagine a case, I for the life of me, Adil, I cannot understand why the 8 cities in India do not mandate electric vehicles. You can reduce pollution by 50%. It's a no brainer. Electric vehicles today are available.
You mean
The
public
say,
transport vehicles?
no, not just public
Uh,
transport, goods vehicles.
Yeah,
Why are
absolutely.
we
Yeah, that
so today?
I
If
still like to have a V8 in my car.
you can have it for your car. Actually,
Yeah.
the cars are not the ones that are
Polluting.
at polluting at some, because they are in the garage. Your V8 you will take out at 3 a.m. in the morning and maybe put it back at 5 a.m. You're not going to drive it 200 kilometers. The commercial vehicles are the vehicles that drive in terms of kilometers and really have the impact on the environment, which is where I would only request that the government should relook at the policy for commercial electric vehicles. That's the best use case for electric, and that's where, as a country, we need to put our eggs in that basket.
Okay, so let's come to the end of this thing. No one could have given such a passionate diatribe on what EVs can do for the country, especially in the commercial vehicle space. And I think, yes, what you said so about the polluting factor for just a little bit of percentage of commercial vehicles contributing to real huge pollution. And that is where I think more than everyone and Niti Aayog have to really think about it. Don't burden the scooter wala and the car wala, because those guys can only buy one scooter or one car in their lifetime. And to get them and you browbeat them down is, and no sins, please. There is no sin in owning a car. So let's get that one thing, this colonial mindset from the socialist times since independence. We have to discard that. So many things the government has done, but to what you will tell me that I'm contributing to sinning by buying a car? No way. I don't think. But what you guys are doing, you're showing a new direction for not just mobility, but to get the nation going amongst the top manufacturing outfits in the world and to take on the world at the same time. Because, like I said, we all start from ground zero. EKA is a good example of what we can do, the diversity with unity. I think that is something terrific. Sudhir, I'm going to be there at your stall at Bharat Mobility to see this phenomenal range which we speak about, because, like they said, there is light at the end of the tunnel. But I also think that every foggy, polluted cloud has a silver lining, and you guys are trying to get that silver lining being omnipresent and shower down on every aspect of things. If you see an EKA, you know where it's coming from. Sudhir and his team in Pune have done the impossible, so to speak, and I'm pretty confident that going forward, this approach of being individualistic yet holistic is really the way to go for the EV commercial vehicle business. Thank you, Sudhir, for spending time with us at Evo. It's been a wonderful thing, and I hope that we'll follow it up pretty soon with something else after we see your trucks and buses and hopefully drive them as well.
Thank you, Adil. And I hope after your visit to the show, the next podcast will be about the power of EV, and I will have convinced you that EVs are the way to go.
One thing across our, since I like to digress, I'm willing to be convinced, and there are many people who are hot on my heels to convince. But till then, I'll come to your facility in my car, petrol engine, and
And
let
no
me see.
sins.
And no sense. Thank you very much, gentlemen. And if you guys think that this very first episode from Evo on the commercial vehicle side of things in the automotive sphere, which we cover, if you like it, please do write to us. We'll be happy to hear from you guys. And till the next podcast, this is Adil Jal Darukhanawala with Sudhir Mehta signing off for Evo.